All right, everybody, strap in because we are diving deep today, going deep into AI in healthcare. And listener name, you have really outdone yourself this time. We're talking articles, research, even your own notes. You are seriously digging into this.
Well, it's definitely a hot topic, and for good reason. It seems like every day there's something new happening in the field. But what's really exciting is that we're way past the theoretical what-if stage with AI in healthcare. We're talking about real-world applications making a real difference, and it looks like you've tapped into that perfectly with what you sent over.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is you're not just interested in what AI can do in healthcare. You want to know how it's actually being used right now, the nuts and bolts.
Exactly. And you flag some really interesting examples, like this one about AI being used to analyze x-rays. And we're not just talking about spotting a fracture. This is about AI potentially being able to catch those really subtle signs of bone diseases, the kind of things that might be missed by the human eye.
Wait, really? So instead of just giving a doctor an image, the AI is basically giving them a detailed report, like, hey, you might want to look at this.
That's the idea. In fact, there's a specific AI tool, a bone age assessment tool, that's being used in pediatric endocrinology right now. It analyzes x-rays of a child's hand and can actually predict their growth potential with a remarkable level of accuracy, I might add. And what's amazing is it's helping doctors diagnose growth disorders much earlier than they could before, which means they can tailor treatments more effectively.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm already seeing how this kind of thing could be absolutely huge for personalized medicine. So you're telling me AI can look at an x-ray and tell how tall a kid's going to be.
It's pretty wild, right? But that's just scratching the surface. When you start to look at what AI can do with those massive data sets of medical information, that's when things get really mind-blowing.
You're talking about those electronic health records, right? EHRs, everyone's talking about them. I have to admit, the thought of all that data always seemed kind of overwhelming.
Overwhelming is a good word. And that's exactly where AI comes in. Imagine AI sifting through like mountains of medical literature in seconds, flagging potential drug interactions that a human doctor, even a whole team of doctors, might completely miss.
So it's like having a superpowered research assistant working 24/7, but specifically for you.
Mhm.
Could that make sense? But those EHRs, I get the potential, but it seems like they're kind of a mess. Like you have different doctors using different terms for the same thing.
Exactly. It's like trying to decipher a secret code sometimes. And this is where it gets really interesting. There's something called natural language processing, or NLP. It basically teaches AI to understand and interpret human language, even the kind of messy, inconsistent language we find in medical records.
Wait, so it's like teaching a computer to understand doctor speak.
Exactly. And it's not just about translating jargon. NLP can identify potentially redundant information in those physicians' notes. You know, like when a doctor repeats the same information multiple times in slightly different ways. Well, NLP can help streamline those notes, make them more concise and easier for other healthcare providers to quickly understand.
That's huge. Talk about saving time and reducing errors. Are there any specific examples of this NLP magic in action?
Oh, absolutely. There's a fascinating case study you flagged about ulcerative colitis. Researchers were using AI tools to analyze biopsies and, get this, predict flare-ups. And they were doing it with some pretty impressive accuracy, even surpassing those traditional methods that rely on human judgment.
Wow, predicting flare-ups. That could be absolutely life-changing for people with chronic conditions. It's like having an early warning system for your own body.
And it goes even deeper than just predicting flare-ups. It's about really understanding the underlying causes, the triggers, and those can be really different from person to person.
So it's like AI is helping us move towards that holy grail of personalized medicine, like tailoring treatments to each individual's unique needs and all that.
Exactly. And this is where AI's ability to analyze these massive data sets, it really, really shines. It can identify those patterns, those connections, things that would be basically impossible for us as humans to spot, just too much data. And that's leading to all sorts of new insights into how diseases progress and how well treatments actually work in the real world.
Okay, this is seriously blowing my mind. It's like we're on the verge of a healthcare revolution. But let's talk about something you mentioned earlier. Telemedicine. How does AI fit into that whole world of remote healthcare? Because that's huge right now.
Ooh, great question. And it actually ties into something else you were curious about, expanding access to care. So telemedicine by itself, it's already kind of bridging those geographical barriers, but AI has the potential to take it to like a whole new level.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example. How does that work?
So imagine this, you have a specialist, maybe in some big city hospital, and they're able to consult with a doctor, but this doctor's in a remote village, maybe even hundreds of miles away. And they're using AI-powered tools to analyze patient data. And that data, it could be coming from something as simple as a smartphone.
So you're talking about bringing specialized medical expertise to even the most underserved areas, places that usually wouldn't have access. That's incredible, seriously.
It really is. And it's not just about the diagnosis either. AI can actually assist with treatment planning, even monitoring a patient's progress remotely.
Hmm.
It's all about making sure that patients everywhere are getting the best possible care, no matter where they live.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a second because something else has been on my mind. We've talked a lot about AI assisting doctors, helping with diagnosis, treatment, all that. But what about its role in actually discovering new drugs? You touched on this earlier, and it feels like a whole other universe of possibilities, honestly.
Oh, it absolutely is. Drug discovery, it's traditionally been this really slow, super expensive process. But AI is totally changing the game here by accelerating every single step. From identifying potential targets for drugs to designing and testing new compounds, AI is speeding it all up.
Okay, break it down for me. How is AI actually making all of that faster? What's it doing?
Well, for one thing, AI can analyze those massive databases we were talking about, but this time we're talking scientific literature, clinical trial data, all that. And it can identify really promising drug candidates that might have been totally overlooked by human researchers.
So it's like AI is doing the really, really tedious work, sifting through these mountains of data to find those like hidden gems, those needles in the haystack.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding existing compounds either. AI can actually help design entirely new drugs by simulating how different molecules might interact with biological targets in the body.
Wow, so AI is like a digital chemist then, creating these new medicines from scratch.
In a way, yeah, you could say that. And this has the potential to revolutionize how we treat so many diseases, especially those really tough ones that are currently difficult or even impossible to cure.
This is mind-blowing stuff. Are there any specific examples of AI-powered drug discovery actually happening right now, like real-world examples?
Absolutely. There's this one company you highlighted in your research that's doing some pretty amazing work in this area. They're using AI to develop new treatments for rare diseases, those conditions that often don't get a lot of funding or attention from the big pharmaceutical companies.
So AI is stepping in where traditional drug development might not be profitable enough, is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And it's not just rare diseases either. AI is being used right now to try to develop new treatments for all sorts of things: cancer, Alzheimer's, infectious diseases, you name it.
Wow. It sounds like AI is becoming a really vital tool in the fight against some of those really huge health challenges, the ones that affect millions of people. But let's bring it back to the individual for a moment, since that's ultimately what matters. We've talked about how AI can help doctors, but what about its role in empowering patients to really take control of their own health?
Oh, that's such an important aspect of this whole thing, and I think you're right. It often gets overlooked. AI-powered tools, they can empower patients by giving them personalized information, more than they could find on their own, and giving them more support too. That way they can make more informed decisions about their own health.
Okay, so what kind of tools are we talking about here? Give me an example.
Well, there are all kinds of AI-powered apps out there that can track your symptoms, analyze your health data, and then they can provide really personalized recommendations for how to manage your condition.
So it's like having a personal health coach, but in your pocket, available all the time.
Exactly. And these apps can be especially helpful for people with chronic conditions. Things like diabetes, heart disease, where constant monitoring and management are key.
Yeah, I can see that. Being able to track your blood sugar or your blood pressure in real time and then get personalized feedback, guidance, all of that, that could make a huge difference in how well you're able to manage those conditions.
Absolutely. And it's not just about tracking and monitoring your numbers either. There are also AI tools that can help patients understand their medications better, manage side effects, even connect with other people who have similar conditions.
That's amazing. It really sounds like AI has the potential to not just improve healthcare from the system side, but to fundamentally change how we experience and manage our own health as individuals.
I couldn't agree more. It's a really exciting time to be following all of this. But I think it's important to remember that even with all this amazing technology, the human element, it's still the most important thing in healthcare.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, healthcare is about people caring for other people.
Exactly. And while AI can definitely make things more efficient, enhance certain aspects, it's never going to replace the empathy, the compassion, that human connection that's so essential to truly healing and well-being. You just can't replace that.
I completely agree. I think that's a really important message to keep in mind, especially as we continue to explore the potential of AI in healthcare. We can't forget about the human side of it. But speaking of exploring potential, you mentioned something in your notes about ChatGPT, that AI chatbot that everyone's talking about,
Yeah.
and how it's like shaking things up in the world of healthcare, even though it's not specifically designed for that.
Oh, yeah. That study you sent over, the one where ChatGPT got higher satisfaction ratings than actual physicians for answering medical questions, that was fascinating.
It really was. What do you make of that? Is it a sign that AI is about ready to replace doctors entirely? Should we all be worried about our jobs?
Well, not so fast. It's important to remember that study, it had some limitations. It focused on those really isolated medical questions, nothing too complex. Not those complex medical histories or anything involving a nuanced diagnosis or any
So it's
fear.
not like ChatGPT is about to, open its own medical practice and start taking patients.
Right, exactly. But it does highlight the potential here, the potential for AI to play a bigger role in things like patient education and communication, especially when it comes to giving people that basic medical information, answering common questions they might have, things like that.
I can see that. Imagine having access to like a 247 AI-powered medical assistant that can answer your questions anytime, day or night, provide reliable information without having to wait for an appointment, or maybe even like point you in the right direction if you do need to see a doctor.
That's the idea. And this could be really, really valuable in areas where there's just a huge demand for services, but not enough providers, like, for example, mental health care.
Oh, how so?
Well, we all know there's a huge shortage of mental health professionals out there, which means a lot of people, they end up having to wait weeks, sometimes even months to get an appointment.
Oh, totally. And if you're in crisis, you can feel impossible to get help quickly.
Exactly. And that's where those AI-powered chatbots, they could help bridge that gap by providing immediate support, giving people resources right when they need them most.
So it's not about replacing human therapists or anything like that, but it's more like a stopgap, a way to get people some initial support, some guidance until they can actually see a professional.
Precisely. And, it could also have the added benefit of maybe reducing the stigma around mental health
Yeah.
by making it easier, less intimidating for people to reach out, get information and support.
That's a really important point. But speaking of mental health and AI, you also mentioned some potential considerations, things we need to be thinking about carefully.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the things we need to be thinking about, especially when it comes to using AI in a field as sensitive as mental health? There's a lot at stake there.
You're absolutely right. The stakes are high. One of the things that comes to mind right away is how these tools might be used in a crisis situation.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like someone's using an AI chatbot because they're feeling suicidal. Maybe they can't reach a therapist or, they're just not ready for that step.
Exactly. And that's where things get really tricky. We need to think very carefully about how these AI tools are designed, how they're used in those really sensitive situations. Like, can the AI accurately assess how serious the situation is? Can it connect the person with the right resources? A human who can really help? Those are big questions.
That makes me think about the technology behind these chatbots. How do you even begin to teach AI to understand those nuances of human emotion, language, especially in a crisis? That seems like a huge challenge.
It's a massive challenge, and it's something that researchers are working on right now. We're not just talking about teaching AI to recognize words on a screen. It's about understanding tone, inflection, even those pauses and hesitations that might signal someone's really in distress.
It's almost like we're talking about teaching AI to have empathy, which sounds, I don't know, kind of crazy when you say it out loud. But on a more practical level, are there safeguards being built into these systems? Ways to prevent misuse or even harmful outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. One approach is to build in really clear disclaimers, limitations. So like, for example, the AI chatbot might explicitly say to the user, hey, I'm not a doctor, I can't give you medical advice. And then it would give them contact information for a crisis hotline or some other mental health resource.
Right, so it's all about transparency, making sure people understand what these tools can and can't do. They're not a replacement for human interaction, especially in those critical moments.
Exactly. It's about responsibility, both on the side of the developers and the users. And we need to be having more conversations about the ethical side of this, involving not just the tech people, but also mental health professionals, ethicists, and really importantly, people who have lived experience with mental health challenges. They need to be part of the conversation.
It sounds like it needs to be a truly collaborative effort to really get this right. But, all of this makes me think about the bigger picture. We've talked a lot about AI's potential to, like, revolutionize healthcare. But what does that actually mean for doctors, nurses, the entire healthcare workforce? Are we all going to have robot doctors soon?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I get asked that a lot. But I think it's important to remember that at its core, healthcare is a very human field. It's about connection. And while AI can automate certain tasks, it can't replicate things like empathy, compassion, critical thinking. Those are uniquely human qualities.
So you're saying it's not about replacing doctors and nurses, but more about giving them better tools so they can focus on what matters most, the patient.
Exactly. I see AI as a powerful ally for healthcare professionals, helping them be more efficient, more accurate, so they have more time and energy to really be present with their patients. Imagine a doctor who can spend less time on paperwork and more time having meaningful conversations with the people they're treating.
Now, that's a future I can get behind. But I do have to say, with all this talk about efficiency and automation, we can't forget the technology isn't perfect, right? There's always that risk of errors, unintended consequences. We have to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for, well, not so good. And that's why we need to have those robust regulatory frameworks in place, to make sure that AI in healthcare is developed and used responsibly. Patient safety and well-being, those have to come first.
It's not just about the technology itself. It's about the ethics, the regulations, the human element. All of these things need to be part of the conversation as AI becomes more integrated into healthcare. So, listener name. It seems like your research this week has led us to a pretty mind-blowing conversation. We've gone from AI analyzing x-rays to AI-powered chatbots providing mental health support. I have to say, AI is poised to transform the world of healthcare in ways that I think we're only just beginning to grasp.
It's an exciting time to be paying attention, that's for sure. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that this technology is evolving incredibly fast. And the impact on healthcare, well, it's only going to become more profound in the coming years.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And listener name, we want to hear from you. What were your biggest takeaways from all of this? What questions are still swirling around in your head after all of that? Don't be shy. Reach out. Let's keep this conversation going. Till next time, stay curious, everybody.